Hi, welcome back to the second half of Lesson 1. So in the first half of Lesson 1, we talked about the immune system, all the way from things that are trying to guard you from the outside, like your skin, your saliva, to the innate immune system, and then to when your immune system learns and the adaptive immune system takes over, targeting specific pathogens that have been presented before. But now we're going to talk about this question. What is actually trying to kill you? What are these pathogens that we keep talking about? So we're going to do a little etymology in this class, and etymology is the science, art, and linguistic practice of putting words together and knowing where they come from. So pathogen is broken down into two Greek roots. First, pathos, which means suffering, like pathology, the science of studying diseases, and ogen, gene, comes from this root, as does oncogen, producer of cancer. So together, if we smash them together, pathos, suffering, gen, producer, we get producer of suffering, so pathogen. But why do pathogens even care about you? Why is a single bacterium swimming along and think, that's a human, I want to be on in near that thing? There is one big reason of this. You are basically a feasting ground for pathogen. So you are wet, so you're full of water that almost all living things need to survive. You're very salty, so you're full of nutrients, and you're really warm. You have a body temperature that is great for a lot of things to live at. So you are really just like this happy place for pathogens to be living. So all of the pathogens we're talking about love living on, in, and near humans. I think this is one of the really fun parts of biology, is so, I think more so than other sciences, we have some really cool images. And so most of these are either animations or electron microscopy images of some of the pathogens we're talking about. And they're really beautiful. This is a really beautiful world we live in. So first we're going to start by thinking a little bit about types of cells and also how cells make up organisms in order to talk about the pathogens that we're going to be considering. Again, this may be review, but new words. So on the left, we have prokaryotic cells, which are the simplest type of cell, and they have no nucleus. So they have nothing enveloping the DNA in the middle. So they have their DNA hanging out over here, but nothing encasing it, and it doesn't have formal organelles. So there's very little actually doing work within this cytoplasm. And they also have these flagella, which are how they get around. In contrast, we have eukaryotic cells, which are what make up most more complex organisms. And they have this nucleus in the center, so we'll point out again, different than the prokaryotic cell here. And all of these organelles, so the Golgi apparatus and the mitochondria, and all these ribosomes, etc., that are all doing all kinds of things in the cell. They're all performing all kinds of different functions. It's not important to know them, but it is important to know the differences between these two kinds of cells. So prokaryotic, no nucleus, really simple. Eukaryotic, nucleus, very complex. So again, that was talking about types of cells, and now we're going to think about kinds of organisms that are made up of different numbers of cells. So first we have unicellular organisms. So this is a protozoa, and uni means one, so like unicycle has one wheel, bicycle has two wheels, but unicycle, like unicellular. And then multicellular, multi means many, so many cells, so it is more than one cell. So our example here is a tree. You are a multicellular organism, so is a tiger. So it's anything that more than one cell. So this is on a microscopic level, and this is on a much larger level. And of course, there's organisms with all kinds of different numbers of cells, but they all function in multicellular if they have more than one. So to start on our first type of pathogen, we're going to talk about fungi. So they're all eukaryotic, and they can be either unicellular or multicellular. And normally when we think about fungi, we think about mushrooms that grow on the ground, and we can make a connection here between pathogenic fungi and fungi that we see out in the world, say, because they both break down organic matter around it for food. So if you had a fungus on the ground, so like a mushroom, it would be breaking down leaves on the surface of the forest floor, wherever it was. And this fungus that we're talking about, so to give you a little context, this is skin on your foot, and this is the fungus Tinea pedis, which is athlete's foot, and it commonly affects hands, feet, and nails. So often it's a fungus that people catch when they walk barefoot in, say, around a pool, because pools tend to be warm, wet areas, and you are a even warmer, wetter, saltier area for this fungus to thrive on. They're often intracellular, which means they'll get into the cells themselves. And our next pathogen is a parasite. So a parasite can mean a lot of things. In this context, we mean animal parasites. So they're all animals, and since they're animals, they're both eukaryotic and multicellular, the same as like a rhino would be, for instance. So a parasite like this, which is a roundworm, yeah, I know it's a little gross, but they're nematodes, and they most commonly live in the intestines in humans. So say you're in a place that has a lot of roundworms in the dirt, and you are a child, and you go and you play in the dirt, and the dirt has roundworms, and so you ingest some of this, and they go into your intestines, and then they eat the food that's swimming around in your intestines, maybe some blood that's there. And so, as you might expect, one of the symptoms of having roundworm is that people very quickly lose weight because they're not actually digesting the food that they're eating. Our next pathogen is bacterium, or the plural bacteria. They are unicellular and prokaryotic. Again, that means they have no nucleus in their cells. And so in the example on the left, which is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is a highly infectious disease that affects mostly the lungs, what happens is the bacteria thrive within the lungs and they begin to damage the lung tissue and interfere with their function. So people have a hard time breathing, both inhaling and exhaling. And essentially the bacteria eat the lungs. And next we have protozoa, which is on the left. They're unicellular and eukaryotic, and they're inserted to an animal by a host. So what I mean by that is this one on the left is Plasmodia, which is the disease it causes malaria. And they're carried by mosquitoes. So mosquitoes flying around and it has Plasmodia in it. And then the mosquito comes to bite you and inserts Plasmodia into your bloodstream. And in doing so, they give you malaria. You contract this disease. We're going to talk about this more next week, but malaria is endemic to South Asia and Central Africa, so it's there all the time. And so those are really difficult diseases to wipe out because you're talking about an entire other species that is affected. So in this case, mosquitoes by this protozoan. Lastly, we have viruses. So on the left, we have the flu virus for influenza. So they're yearly and they have outbreaks worldwide. So viruses, the important thing about them is that they're not living. And so we'll explain a bit about what that means in a little bit. But they are not made up of cells. They cannot reproduce on their own like everything else. They don't have their own metabolism, so they can't process their own food. And in order to do all of this, so in order to eat and metabolize and reproduce, they have to invade host cells to use their machinery. And so that's what the flu does. So here are the 5 types of pathogens we talked about today. A fungus, a parasite, a bacterium, a protozoan, and a virus. Again, the first 4 are all living, and viruses are not living. And what we mean by that, again, is to be alive is to carry genetic material, so mostly in the form of DNA or RNA. You can reproduce on your own and you share genetics with the host cell that you are invading. But if you are not alive, you're not composed of cells. Like a virus is not composed of cells. It can't replicate on its own. It has to have a host in order to replicate. And viruses don't have their own metabolism. So to recap, in this lecture, we talked about the different kinds of immunity and the basics of what might make them up. And then we talked about the different kinds of pathogens and what is actually trying to kill you. And so hopefully you are doing a good job of staying away from pathogens that are attempting to kill you this week. And I'll see you next week to talk a little bit more about how infectious diseases like these spread through communities. Thanks.